going to need an army to go against me. I fell off my roof and I broke some ribs. Every time I talked to him, I said, I want my truck. Then he started threatening me.
Our main protagonist in today's video is Roy Fraser, the man accused for fatally shooting 2 of his roommates in the head and burying their bodies in his property. On April 2009, 24-year-old Kenneth Yorteze Jr. and 31-year-old Damien Marks vanished without any apparent reason, leaving their loved ones in constant thought and worry. A week of relentless investigation yielding to nowhere and to no answers, prompting Kenneth's father to visit the home of Roy Frederick Fraser. Kenneth and his roommate are business partners. However, Fraser denies any knowledge of their whereabouts, claiming ignorance about their disappearance. Despite his protestation, the police's thorough search led them to Fraser's property, where they made a quite chilling discovery. Kenneth and Mark's lifeless bodies were found and were in terrible condition due to many marks of gunshot and stab wounds, and they were on the very ground where Fraser and Kenneth had been growing marijuana together. This tragic revelation marks the beginning of the Roy Fraser case. Prior to being highlighted as a possible suspect, Fraser took the initiative to approach the police, volunteering to testify his relationship with Kenneth.
And with me is Mr. Roy Fraser. It's F-R-A-S-E-R?
Yep.
Is that the right spelling?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a middle name, Mr. Fraser?
Frederick.
Frederick?
The interrogation started with the formal protocols, including the announcement that the interview was being recorded and other standard procedures, such as formal introductions of each other.
So can you tell me how you ended up phoning him?
His dad, or Ken's dad, came and talked to me Friday night and said, have you seen Kenny? And I said, no. And said, is his stuff still here? And I said, yeah, his bed's here, and, all his stuff is still here, And he says, well, they're missing, blah, blah, blah. And they said they've been missing for like a week.
Who's they?
Pardon me?
When you say they...
Kenny and his friend.
Kenny and his friend. Did you mention his friend's name?
Damien.
Damien?
Damien.
Fraser candidly admits why he made the call to the police, and the reasons are crystal clear. He knew he was bound to end up on the suspect list because, of course, he had a history with Kenneth. He also, of course, had Kenneth's belongings in his apartment.
Okay. So what was the relationship between you and Ken?
We were just friends.
Friends?
Yeah.
So you've known him for a while?
A couple years. A girl that I knew from Calgary that I was going out with for a bit. When she come to town, she introduced me to.
Okay.
And that was it. And and then I haven't seen her in like a year and a half.
Okay.
And stuff. So, but Ken and I, like, he come out to my place and I showed him where I live, and he come out a couple of times and he brought some beer and I thought he was a good kid. And that was it.
Their relationship extended beyond more than friendship. Kenneth and Fraser were actually business partners, involved again in selling marijuana at Fraser's rental property in Canal Lake. This fact presents one plausible theory behind the brutal killings of Kenneth, and would also mark a motive that remains uninvestigated.
And where did you see him?
When did I see? Where?
Yeah.
Oh, he come to my house.
Oh, he came over to your place?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and what was his mood at that time?
His mood was good when I see him.
Unlike many other unwise suspects, Fraser is making the same mistake by refraining from seeking legal action and is attempting to construct his own narrative. This approach is only compounding his difficulties and making his situation much harder. His lies, which included him giving false dates and manipulating timelines, which are proven ineffective in trying to prove himself as a non-guilty man. Instead, they're further entangling him in a web full of trouble.
He's using my truck. And at first I really, I let him use my truck because, like, I fell off my roof and I broke some ribs, March 5th or 6th, right? And I told him that, and I want my truck and, and everything else, and spring is coming up. And I said, my insurance is due in 4 or 5 days. I want my truck. Every time I talked to him, I said, I want my truck. In the last few months, he'd come out like once a month or something. and I try phoning him on his cell phone, and he's not answering his cell phone number. But, you know, come the new year, every time I seen him or talked to him, I said, I want my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and then the last time I talked to him, I said, I'm going to call the RCMP, and then he started threatening me.
And it was by, you received a phone call from, or
Yeah.
you called him on his cell?
No, he called me.
He called you?
Yeah, you know, and I said, if you don't come with my truck, I'm going to call the RCMP. And then he started threatening me.
What did he say?
He says, the RCMP won't do you any good. You're going to need an army to go against me. That's what he said.
The truck that Fraser mentions is another one of the possible theories as to why Kenneth and Marks aren't alive anymore. Fraser's visible frustration becomes evident through his body language and his statements. According to him, Kenneth borrowed his truck for a brief period of time, but instead of returning the truck, he instead took possession of it and refused to give it back. This circumstance raises the idea that Fraser may have killed him over this dispute. However, this motive doesn't explain on why Marks also met his end as well. According to statements, Mark was killed also because he had witnessed what happened between Fraser and Kenneth. Unlike Kenneth, Marks had no history of involvement in drugs or other activities. He simply found himself at the wrong place at the wrong time.
He told me that he became an IS member.
Ken told you that?
Yeah, you know, and, you know, I said, I didn't think that you wanted anything to do with gangs. You know, and he said he'd been trying to get in there for 2 or 3 years, you know.
Fraser's seen attempting to divert the attention from himself by suggesting the possibility that the independent soldiers, the IS gang to be more specific, might be responsible for the disappearance or the deaths of the two. He subtly introduces the idea that Kenneth may have been associated with the IS gang, which is not entirely unfounded. The independent soldiers, or again known as the IS gang, is a notorious organized crime group operating in British Columbia, Canada, with involvement in organized crime activities nationwide and even within Canada prisons. By mentioning this, Fraser seems to be subtly implying that Kenneth's association with the IS gang might have led to the unfortunate events. However, it still remains whether the claims actually hold some truth to it, or is Fraser using this as some sort of tactic and diversion to get the attention away from him.
So what did Ken do for a living?
I don't know what he did.
Do you know if he had any employment?
He didn't have a job or anything.
Fraser would yet again tell another lie, claiming ignorance about Kenneth's employment or the nature of his livelihood, despite both of them being in a marijuana operation together. These lies are only adding to the complexity of his situation, as providing self-serving alibis and avoiding legal counsel rarely led to favourable outcomes. After listening to what he believes to be possible information in under 30 minutes, the detective changes his approach and decides to assert some pressure on Fraser.
We're trying to find out what happened to him.
Yeah.
So we need to find out all the details. We really don't care about any criminal activity that you may have been involved in. So I just want to make you relax about that.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'd like to get the true story when I can. We're not blind. We're not blind to anything.
Right.
And I just don't want to. He said, I'd like you to be as frank as you can be to show me what was the relationship between you and Ken. I think there's a little bit more to the story now. So, but we need to know all those little details. If something did happen to Ken or Damien, we'd like to know. And so, any little details that you may have, or anything that you're not telling me, like nobody's an angel. Right?
I don't know what happened to the.
He would reassure that Fraser can relax, but simultaneously the detective hints that there is more to this story, that Fraser is keeping a secret. By doing so, the detective plants the idea in Fraser's mind that despite his voluntary appearance and cooperation, getting out of this situation without further scrutiny won't be as straightforward as he hoped so.
So let me ask you that, was there more than what you just told me about your relationship with Ken?
What he did, after he told me he became an independent soldier, I just don't like those gang guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, Like, I've never liked gang guys.
When the detective asked Fraser, as he told him all the details about his and Kenneth's relationship, Fraser, instead of giving a straightforward answer, would instead veer off track, once again bringing up the gang, and once again diverting from the actual question. However, the detective isn't easily swayed and persists, mentioning Fraser's involvement in the dope business.
You guys get into criminal activities, whether or not it is to, let's say, grow dope.
Yeah.
You guys growing dope together?
No.
No?
No. He wanted to grow dope.
At your place?
No, at another place.
Another place, okay.
Yeah, another place. I've never been to the place in that, but
were they taking care of a grow somewhere close to your place? Was it the reason why they were living so far out of the city?
no, they had a place that it was, I don't know, half an hour or 40 minutes from my place that they wanted to set up, but they never did set it up.
When you say they again, it's Damien and Ken.
Well, originally it was supposed to be Damien and Ken, but you know, it never got set up, so.
Did you do any work for Ken and
No,
Damien?
I didn't.
In response to the claim, Fraser would shift to another lad. He would blame everything on Kenneth by claiming it was Kenneth's idea to grow dope. But the truth is that both Kenneth and Fraser had jointly planted the marijuana on Fraser's property last year, and Fraser was the one operating the whole operation himself.
The transfer form
Okay.
for ownership. Just want to see if you can tell me whether or not the signature or handwriting is yours.
As the investigation proceeds onwards, the detective delves into the topic of Fraser's truck and questions why a lent vehicle cannot be treated as a stolen. But despite the line of questioning, Fraser keeps his composure and keeping his demeanor simple and often flashing a calm smile during the interrogation. He feels secure that his property hasn't been searched yet, and this false sense of security leads him to think that he won't be considered as a serious suspect. But little does he know the search of his property would be the final nail in the coffin.
So last time you spoke to him was on the phone, beginning of March, you said? Roughly,
Yep.
of this year.
Yep.
You spoke to Ken. Ken phoned you.
Yep.
Tell me again the conversation that you had with Ken on the phone. How did it go?
I don't know, like, the beginning of the conversation, but, like, I can't remember, but at the end, you know, like, I kept telling him, like, I want my truck back, right? And I said, Kenny, I'm going to report you to the RCMP.
Mhm.
And then he just blew up, you know, on the phone. And everything else, and tell me I'd need an army to go up against him and just everything, right? And he's screaming at me on the phone, and I'm just holding the phone.
The detective restarts the conversation by employing a common technique, which was asking Fraser to recall the last call he had with Kenneth, hoping to uncover any inconsistencies in Fraser's recollection. However, to the detective's surprise, Fraser confidently recalls the events without any sign of deception, leading him to believe that he has successfully removed himself from any suspicion. But unfortunately for Fraser, the interrogation does not end there. The subsequent search of his property yields damning evidence. Kenny's blood is discovered on the premises, and burnt evidence is found in a fire pit. Furthermore, the murder weapon is also unearthed, providing substantial proof against him. Additionally, forensic details, like determining whether the murderer was left-handed or right-handed, incriminating Fraser even more. Fraser would maintain his innocence throughout the trial, claiming that he did not kill Kenny or Marks. However, the jury swiftly reaches to a decision based on the overwhelming evidence at hand. The bodies were found on his land, also the murder weapon was found on his land, and there was attempts to destroy the evidence, and of course that was evident due to the fire pit. Ultimately, Fraser is found guilty of first-degree murder of Damien Marks and guilty of second-degree murder for the death of Kenneth Jr. He received a life sentence with parole ineligibility for 10 years on one count and 25 years for another account.